Hey everybody, Gisele Grenier here. So in this little video tutorial, I'm going to be doing a review on a new product from DecoArt. It's their Chalk Gesso. So for those of you that know me, this is what I use for my, and I don't primarily use the black, but this is what I use for my gesso. There's the size difference. So we're talking 118 mil to 946 mil. Huge difference. The gesso that I use for the media line, I have three of these jars. One is the gesso used as is. The other one is the gesso as I open up a new container and use it down. When it gets to about the 3/4 of the way point, I add some distilled water to thin it down. Then the other container is the if I take a new thing of gesso, open it up, I stir it, let it the water evaporate, the natural water evaporate out of it, so it thickens up. So I have a thinner, regular, and then a thicker part of this gesso. So one thing right off the bat is economy. So we all know that when you get stuff in bigger containers that it's a lot more economical. So that's a plus. I love bigger things because it reduces on packaging. Okay, it's little fiddly things, packaging. So I love the big ones, which makes great packaging. And if I have to go someplace, to go on the road, I'm going to be painting someplace else, I can pour some of this into a small container. That way there's no waste. Okay, so that's one, the economy. Then the one thing is when you get things like this, and it happened to me, is that you had the I'll call it the glue, the binder was on top, and that happens, it's settling. Every product does it when it sits in the warehouse. So taking this and shake, 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 and this is a lot for me to shake. So shake, shake, shake. So I can already hear that it's more fluid. Have you ever had it when you buy paint and you shake, shake, shake and all that stuff, and then when it gets down to the bottom, you get that clump of pigment? So that's what I want to test with this one. So I haven't opened these yet. Okay, so let's pour that. What I'm looking for is a clumpiness. There's a particular brand of gesso I was using, and oh, the stuff was just like clumps and clumps and clumps. It was awful. I hated it. So what I want to do with this now is, where's my skewer? I want to take a skewer and I want to go to the very bottom to see if there's any big clumps. There's just two little ones. I didn't do a big. I'm looking for that sediment on the bottom, and there is none. But I do need to do a lot more mixing. Yeah, there's a little bit of, it still hasn't been quite mixed yet. So, oh, I shouldn't be doing that because I'm taking, make sure your hands are clean if you put the gesso back in the bottle like this. You don't want your oils from your hands getting in there. And so that's that. So it does require good mixing. And for me, like with arthritis, doing that is heavy on the hand. So a paint stick, that's going to be your best friend, is a paint stick with something like this. We have mixers that hook onto a drill when we do our resin work, so I could use that on this too. All right, so that takes care of that. So what I'm going to do now is I'll just keep shaking. So it comes in white and it comes in black, and on the back there's nothing extraordinary on what you can be used for. So create the ideal surface for acrylic and oil painting with a super smooth matte gesso primer. Forms a suede-like finish on canvas. That I like, the suede-like finish, because then it makes there's tooth for paint to stick to. On canvas, wood, and more. Ideal for fine art and decorative painting projects. Directions: apply a heavy coat with a soft brush. Add more coats for increased smoothness. Dry completely before use. No sanding required. Water-based, permanent, soap and water cleanup. Then go to the website for more information. The one thing I don't understand is how can you apply a heavy coat with a soft brush if this is more of a fluid product? So that is something that would require a bit of testing. Okay, so I'll put these aside. So, whoops. So there's a couple of things that I'm going to be testing out, and basically what I'm doing is what I do with this one, I want to see if it will work with this one. So you can already see it's a lot more fluid. Okay. And this is my regular one, so this has not been thinned or thickened. So that's how thick that is, okay? And this one is very, very fluid. Nothing wrong with this. So using these two, I wouldn't need to thin this down anymore. This is what I was thinning it down to get to this consistency. One thing to test over a few days is, can you thicken it up a bit more? Then ideally it would eliminate the need for this, because I could just make it out of this because it's a bigger container. All right, so put this over here. Close that up. I got my notes. Okay, so the first thing I want to test is covering power. I always like to tell students, use what you have. If you don't like it, cover it with gesso. That's the easy thing to do. Well, the way that I cover, I start off by using my fancy number 8 bristle brush. It's just a royal soft brush, very inexpensive. So I'm going to grab some gesso. Okay, holding the brush really well. Let's see what we got here. This is smooth. This is very smooth. And just scrub. So it holds the ridges, but it is thinner than the DecoArt media. It is thinner. So I'll just do this part here. And now let me get this one here. See, this is much thicker. So by nature, yeah, the thicker one's going to give you more coverage because there's less moisture in it. So if you had this, what could you do? You do a couple of extra layers. That adds time there, or just let some of the moisture evaporate out of the product. So I have to make sure now that I know which is which. So this is DecoArt Media Gesso, this one here, just so I don't get confused. Okay, so covering power, I mean, it's fine because we always end up wiping it back anyways, so that's good. So covering power, to me, is satisfactory. Ouch. Just hit the camera. I'm sorry. All right, what's next on my list? So I talked about the economy. I talked about the mixing, the covering power. Oh, so stencils. I like to test on how it handles with a stencil. So I'm going to test it on what? Let me test it on something that's got a pattern on it. So when testing paint and even gesso is when I stencil, like this particular technique. This is a medium thickness stencil. It's not super thin, not super thick. Especially with the thicker ones, like the DecoArt home decor ones where they're thicker. When I put the gesso through it and I lift the stencil up, I want that gesso to hold the shape. I don't want it to go like this. So that's going to be the test. But this is pretty fluid. So I don't think it's going to hold the shape. But I could thicken it up. I'm just seeing how long it'll take before it drips. Yeah. So let's see what we got here. And you lift straight up. Yeah, it didn't hold the shape. It was a lot of gesso. So it fell through underneath the stencil. Okay. So what I can do, I hate wasting. I hate wasting. So I'm going to end up doing a piece of art on this. Let's take a baby wipe. And let's just spread that out over there. This baby wipe's been dried a little bit. So again, that you can let the water evaporate a little bit. Okay. And just basically I put it into a small container, stir. You can do it over a day. Like right now, like this is summer right now, depending on when you're watching. It's super hot and humid, so the humidity will prevent it from evaporating. But you can, you know what I'm talking about, right? You just want to evaporate some of the moisture. With this, what you can do now, if we were to, I'll just do it over here, is just put a much lighter film on it, but use a brush. would just use let's see how that works. Not bad. I got a little bit too much paint in there. Okay, so far for my style of creating the artwork, I would need to let this thin out. Am I saving anything? Because with this one here, I would have the three, remember? The one as is, then one with the product thinned, and then one with the product thick. Am I saving anything with this? I would still then take this. This would be the thin one. I would need to let it evaporate to get to a thicker stage, and evaporate more to get even thicker stage. So I'm still having to let it evaporate. So still the biggest pro, I should say not the con, biggest pro, it's in a bigger container. Less packaging, less material waste, and it's more economical. That still holds a big bonus in my eye. My eye and my mind. What else do we have? Okay, so we did the economy. We did mixing and clumping. I'm not cleaning my hands for a reason. The opacity, we did the opacity test. Where did it go? The opacity, transparency. And I'm looking at this. So now it's as it's drying, I like the feel of this. This here, the DecoArt Media, this one here is a bit rougher because it's thicker. But this here, it feels really smooth. But there is truth when I touch the paper versus this, it is smoother than this, but this will still grab paint. And we're going to do that test in a couple of minutes. Scrubbing, I did that test. And, oh, flat coverage. So flat coverage testing. Let's just grab on a dry brush. Let's do another piece of scrapbook paper. Oh, this flows beautifully. Now, flat coverage, this is critical. When I say flat coverage, is at absolutely zero ridges. It's like a veil going over. This is critical when we do portrait painting. Now, I say portrait painting in a certain style. If you want to get something that's more realistic and you don't want to see ridges or texture. Okay, if you don't want to see texture. And this dries super fast. And let's see if I want testing to see if something's going to happen, which usually happens when you use a product that is usually thinner. The paper isn't curling. Usually when you use products that are thinner in texture and like there's more fluid in them, like this fluid, usually the paper will really curl, and it's not. So, but I love how the smoothness of this is. Now look at the second coat. Love this. I can't get over how fast this is drying. Okay, that's the second coat. Let's let that dry for a little bit more. And that was the last of that experiment. So now what I want to do is, when I use gesso on my hands, especially this one, it's pretty hard to come off. It's a primer. So just with the baby wipe. Okay, it's as difficult to remove as the DecoArt Media gesso. And that's a good thing. It means it's bonded. When I use house primer or drywall primer or whatever, you almost need a sander to get it off. All right, so that takes care of that. There we go, look at that. I love that coverage. Love that coverage. So I put to dry, I had this on its side. It's not dripping. So it's just a little too fluid to apply thickly. So yeah, I would have to let it thin out to to apply this thickly. Okay, I think I said that right. Put that over there. I'm going to use this one now for the next test. So, how well the paint sticks. Now, I'm doing all the experiments with the white. The black I haven't opened yet either. Just want to give that another minute. It's still wet in the corner. A few years ago, quite a few years ago, I bought a thing of gesso. I was in another city. The gesso was gray. It wasn't black. Let me test this out. Let me test this out. Yeah, that's black. I love the flow of this. This is really nice. Gesso is one of those things you really should have. If you're into painting, mixed media, you really should have gesso in your arsenal, because not only is it a primer, it can be used for so many different things, and it is more economical. I mean, you can use like black paint, but this has a satin finish, whereas, you know, the chalk paint or chalk medium, you could use that. But, you know, this is a lot more economical than using actual paint. Let me move that. That's the media one. I'm not gonna worry about that one. It's how the paint sticks to the, oh my goodness, how the paint sticks to the gesso. Let's get another scrubby brush. Dry. I use it dry. When I'm testing to see if the gesso grabs unevenly, and then I'm going to take a baby wipe and try to wipe some of it back. I'm scrubbing to see if I could wreck the paper. So this is going to, it's almost like the gesso is a barrier to protect the paper, even though it's a light, thin coat. Nope, no. What's that word? Piling, where the, you know, where the paper kind of curls up into little fibers. Let's apply a thicker coat. The more you rub and rub and scrub and scrub, you rub out the paper. Let's go down to the fluid one. I have to work fast because it's drying. I want to show you the difference with the gesso without. And this experiment is basically to show you, you know, how I use it for my own style, and to see, you know, before you commit to changing your gesso or buying something new, and a lot of you don't even use gesso, you can actually see it in action. So fresh baby wipe. And now we start to rub back. Ooh, I like this. I love the way. So always turn to a fresh baby wipe. Maybe saying, why are you wiping it off if you want to, you know, if you're going to take it off? Why are you, blah, 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 blah. Why are you taking it off if you put it on? It's not wasting. No, it's for an effect. And I'm looking to get this grunge, this street grunge here. It's for an effect. See, with the thicker gessos, you get that real heavy duty texture. But if you don't have gesso down, nothing happens. What will happen? You keep rubbing and rubbing and rubbing and rubbing and rubbing. Yeah. I don't know if you can see. The paper's starting to come up because there's nothing to protect it. That's why, if you're into mixed media, especially this type of thing where you're going to create some texture, it's important that you use gesso. Now, the gesso was dry, I can still remove a little bit. And then what you can do from here is that you can then apply another layer of something else or whatever. Like I can come in with blue or a green or a yellow. Let's do that. And this technique works really well when it's transparent colors. This is Handsy Yellow. Oh, I should tell you the colors I'm using. So this paint I'm using is the DecoArt Traditions. This is the bottle version. They have tube versions now, which is easier on the hands. Handsy Yellow Light, and the blue was, of course, Ultramarine Blue from my limited palette. Make sure that's dry. And then you can come in. For something so smooth, like this Chalk Gesso, for something that smooth, I'm very surprised on how well it's grabbing the paint. Like I didn't think it would grab it this well because it's so smooth. Let's just show you this one. Of course, this one's going to grab because of the texture. So for a real grungy, my mouth is run today. For a really grungy effect, then this works out really well. But look how smooth that is. And then from there, I mean, you can then, you know, wipe it back a little bit more if need be. Let's say if it's a little bit too bright on the camera, it probably looks green. Just to blend out the edges. So there you go. So I really like the way this works. So on the pro and con, so economy, it's smooth, so I would let it thicken up a little bit more to get this type of effect. Less packaging, that's a key one. My only con with this one, and that's just because I've been spoiled with small containers, is it's still a little bit clumpy even though I shook this before camera for about 4 minutes. So I would have to get a paint stick to initially stir it up to get rid of a couple of the bits. And that could have been too, because I scraped the top back in here. That could have been from that. It's not, but you know, you don't know. And this one here, the black, doesn't seem to have... It doesn't see... Oh, you can't see what I'm doing. It doesn't seem to have any of that. So it just likely could be I just stirred it, didn't mix it enough. But that doesn't have the clumps. It's nice and smooth. Alrighty, you guys. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight onto these two new products. This black one will last me forever. But I'm going to be now doing an experiment on thickening it up to see if I can mimic this. And if that works, I'll be switching my gesso. I'll keep the containers, but I won't be using this one anymore. I'll be using this from an economy standpoint and the reduction in packaging. All right, so thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions, if any of this made sense, because my mind is going one way, my mouth is going the other. If you have any questions, head on over. Head on over to my Facebook page or the community where you can post questions in there. And if you have any pictures to post, you can do them there. YouTube, unfortunately, doesn't allow you to post pictures. So that's why I do everything over on the other social platform, so we can post pictures and we can share and see what everybody's doing. And it's a lot easier to troubleshoot that way than doing it via text. Alrighty, so thank you so much for being with me. And until I see you next time, stay inspired.